Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Private Flight Insight session. I'm Alex Sailing, and today we're going to be covering a brief insight and background to custom aircraft paint designs. Now, I certainly think it, but a lot of you probably wonder, where do those beautiful paint schemes come from in most general aircraft? Well, today I'm pleased to say that we're joined by Craig Barnett, who certainly has the answer and also is responsible for a lot of those designs we see on general aviation aircraft today. So Craig, thank you very much for joining us, and how are you?
Good, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. All I can say is head down, trying to keep busy in lockdown over here in the UK. How are things over in the States for you, and generally, how's business been recently?
Generally, business has been surprisingly excellent, I think, because a lot of people are locked down. So we've had a tremendous influx of clients over the past year. And people are designing on all kinds of interesting aircraft, and we've got to do some incredible work this year.
So I've got to say, Craig, normally I come across you at shows, certainly at Oshkosh. I know you are often at Sun and Fun, and you're over here at various shows, including Aero Friedrichshafen. But in the absence of those shows this year, have you found that you've still been busy and business has been coming your way still?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, if you think of those shows, we've been doing Oshkosh and Sun and Fun and other shows around the world for over 20 years. So we have a lot of longevity and have built a lot of presence at those shows. So people remember us. A lot of people who stop our booths at shows don't need to paint a plane at that particular time. And it amazes me that I'll get a call and someone will say, "Oh yes, I saw you at Oshkosh in 2007, and now I'm ready to paint my Cherokee and we need help." So those shows have a lot of longevity. But in addition, we've been around so long and we've done so many prominent aircraft. And we've been written about around the world in terms of our capabilities and what we do in our little niche industry, that when it comes time for people to paint, they remember us. And at the moment, with a lot of people flying less places to go, or in some cases not being able to fly at all, this is the time they want to paint their aircraft. And
Exactly.
so, yes, 2020 turned out to be the best year we've ever had.
Fantastic. It's good to hear some positive news for a change, because it has been a challenging year for a lot of people and a lot of businesses.
Yes.
So that's credibility to your, as you say, to longevity of your business, and obviously the reputation you have made. So Craig, let's start with this. Give me a short background to the history of scheme designers, including your growth to this point.
Well, it all started a very long time ago, Alex. When I was a kid, I was always drawing aircraft, and even though I took the route of going and becoming a civil engineer, aircraft were always close to my heart. I grew up in a flying family. And my father actually was one of the first people in the world to rebuild a Mark 9 Spitfire.
Amazing.
And when he had finished with that project, which took place in our backyard in a workshop area that he built, he was a little bored. So we bought a couple of crashed Cessna 150s, and together we put them together into a single flying aircraft so he could have something to teach me to fly on. So I was a very lucky kid in that I got to learn to fly without any investment, with a father who was a flight instructor and with my own little Cessna 150. Why I say it starts there is because that plane desperately needed paint, especially since it was made from two different aircraft. It had one yellow wing, one polished wing. The cowling was from one aircraft, the tail was from another aircraft. So it really was a weird looking plane. And I remember I spent months designing paint schemes for that. It never occurred to me that as much fun as I was having designing that paint scheme, this could actually be something that you could do for your life and earn a living. Years went by, I moved to the US, and I eventually made enough money to buy my first plane and had to go get it painted. And I did the design, and then being an engineer, I engineered the design and brought everything down to the smallest measurements to get it accurately laid out. And when I walked into the paint shop, they said, wow, this is quite something. I gave them a whole pile of detailed drawings. They said, can you do that for some of our clients, perhaps? And I said, sure, why not? They sent me some software they couldn't use, which was CorelDRAW. And then it just went quiet. And about a year later, they called and they said, did you ever get that software? And I said, yes. They said, well, we've got a client for you. And so in 1997, this first client, which was an owner of a Cessna 210 who happened to be based in the same state that I'm in New Jersey, called to say, oh, I need a paint scheme design. And so I started.
That light bulb moment went there. You just thought, yeah, I can do this.
It wasn't quite like that. I designed, and I was designing, you know, for fun in the evening, on the weekends, just enjoying it. Someone else heard of what I was doing and found it quite interesting, a writer called James Winbrandt, and he decided to pitch a story to the magazine he worked for on designing paint schemes. And they ended up doing a cover page article on me. And no sooner had that dropped, the phone rang, and there was Piper saying, hey, we're launching a brand new aircraft called the Meridian, and we need something dramatic designed for it. I wonder if you could help us. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so that's really where I turned it from a bedroom business into a real business. Today, 24 years later, we're a staff of 8 with 4 full-time designers that are specialized and do nothing else but design for aircraft. Not 100% true. Sometimes we'll design a boat for an aircraft owner or a truck for an aircraft owner. So we probably have about 20 to 30 designs over the years that aren't on aircraft. But the vast majority, over 14,000 unique designs, are flying out there. And that doesn't include the duplicates from manufacturer paint schemes we've done, or the people who've borrowed our paint schemes. So just about everywhere I go in the world now, if I land at an airport, there's going to be work we've done sitting on the ramp. So it's pretty satisfying.
So it's pretty safe to say then, Craig, that there's no business or no project, shall I say, too small or too big for you to handle. And you know, what would you say makes your business different to others? You know, what is it about your the culture of your business, or you know, the policies that you have that make you stand out?
Well, I approach the general aviation industry in a unique way. First of all, let me say that we don't only do general aviation aircraft, we do corporate aircraft, commercial aircraft, and everything in between. So we've got airliners flying around the world down to kit-built aircraft all over the world. One thing we try and do is make sure that the person who's flying around in their little Cessna 150 is just as important and special as the prince who's flying around in his BBJ. And they get the same treatment, the same level of detail. And we've structured our pricing in a way that the Saudi prince has no problem affording us, but the guy with the Cessna 150 affords us too. I come from the small side of general aviation, and I want our clients to be the owners of all kinds of planes. So we've designed these flat fee programs that allow an owner to explore the limits of their imagination without ever worrying about price. You know, if you're doing design and every time you pick up the phone to the designer, you're worrying that another hour of time is going to be tacked onto your project, you're going to limit your creativity. And we've taken the approach of not allowing that. So we charge a flat fee. And from that point forward, you can work with us for as long as you want, through as many designs as you want, with as many changes as you want, until you're absolutely happy. And if it takes 2 weeks, 2 years, or 2 decades, we don't care. The project is just going to be ongoing. We've had some very long-running projects. Last March, which I think was the last time I traveled, I finished a beach bonanza for a client in South Africa that we started in 2003. And his was a flat fee project, and every now and again he'd come back, we'd make changes, he would disappear, and we would wait to see him in a year or two again. And eventually the plane had to be painted.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it just so happened that coincided with a trip I had to make to South Africa. So I actually took the paint mask and all the documentation directly to the paint shop in Johannesburg, and hand delivered it. So that was extra special service.
Well, it's a very personable service, I have to say, Craig, and the flat fee offers no risk in the back, well, no risk to pilots or potential customers of yours, because they sometimes things change along the way, and you're there to pick it up and take it maybe in a different direction again. So hats off to you with the policies that you have there, as a flat fee, as many changes as you want. Talk a bit more about your designers. I certainly I've been in your office before, and I'm certainly very lucky to say I have. The faces are always familiar. Have they been with you at your business for a while, or are some new?
So the thing you should note is this sounds like a very simple business, but the ability to actually effectively design for aircraft is not something that any random graphic artist can just pick up and do. It's a complex shape. Pilots look at their aircraft in a way that people who don't have any relationship to aircraft maybe don't understand. I guess golfers look at their clubs that way. Boaters look at their boats that way. And I have no concept of that because I'm not a golfer and I'm not a boater. But there's a way of looking at aircraft. There's a way of enhancing and working on an aircraft. And then there's also the complexities of shape and the practicality of getting something painted at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
When you take all of that together, when a new designer joins Scheme Designers, it takes me about 18 months of training before I'm prepared to let them loose on a client. That's a large investment in a person. And as such, all of our designers have been with us for years and years and years, because they get into a specialized area. And not only are they working on interesting projects that change every day, but they're working with a lot of interesting people. Our clients are all super nice. This is for a large portion of our clients, this is their hobby and passion. So when they're dealing with the aircraft, they're always happy and joyful. And so it's a real pleasure to do the work we do. And what's interesting about the multiple designers that work at Scheme Designers is, yes, each of them is trained to understand the nuances of designing and specifying paint schemes, which allows them to actually get effectively onto an aircraft. But more importantly, they each have a different and unique style that they bring. So when someone comes to work with Scheme Designers, let's say they start with me and I design and design and design, and they feel they're not just getting what they want, I have other people at my disposal that I can pass them on to and say, okay, this guy didn't work with my styles. Here's Alicia or Kevin or Chris. Let them work with one of the other designers. And the same thing happens with the other designers. There are times where their design's style doesn't gel with the client and it ends up on my desk or one of the other designers' desks. So that gives a much broader range of design options, thought and imagination that can go into a project. And as such, we don't really have people who don't get a design they like in the end. We work with them forever. And at the end of the day, they're going to be happy, and we don't stop until they're happy. I get clients who call and apologize for making little changes, and I'll often tell them, this is what you bought. You can make as many changes as you want for as long as you want until you're happy. And we're good at what we do. So don't get me wrong, not every client is going to spend 10 years with us. Most clients go through our design process fairly efficiently so that we can at least turn a dollar at the end of the day.
Well, Craig, I've also got a burning question, because I want to ask you about some of the projects that have stood out for you over the years. As you say, you've been around for a while, kept many clients on. Before I get there, though, let's just take me for an example. I come to you interested in getting a scheme design created. What services do you offer me, or the general aviation pilot, and talk me through the process once you've received an order from me.
Sure. So first of all, we have three primary flat fee services. The first one, which we call our base program, is when somebody, let's just pick an aircraft, has a Cessna 172, and they want to emulate a design they've seen on another 172. So we have a starting point. We check whether we can use that starting point. Is it a factory scheme? Is it someone else's custom design, in which case permission might be needed? So we go through that process. But at the end of the day, it's a design that's evolved with a 172. So we know where we're going, and we have a relatively easy starting point. It may go through 20, 30, 50, 100 iterations or 2 iterations before it goes to specification, but the end product will relate to the beginning point. Then we have a project called our adaptation project that is a little more extensive in that you come to us with your Cessna 172 and you bring us a picture of a TBM 850 and you say, I really love that scheme. I want to adapt that to work on my 172. So now you've got a lot more initial design work to make a design work on a completely different airframe. Once you've got that initial design work out of the way, it follows the base program. You're following the theme that was selected, and you're exploring colors and manipulating design as many times as you want until the client's happy. And then finally, you get the client who comes to us and says, I don't know what I want, or I've found 7 different pictures of things that interest me, or I want something completely unique, and here's a picture of a shower curtain in my house that I really like, and I want that pattern incorporated, and this is a picture of my car, and I like the way the lights are reflecting on the hood. I want that emulated, whatever the starting point is. That's our custom design program. And there we'll explore an unlimited number of design directions, unlike the first 2, and then unlimited changes and modifications. So typically in those programs, we start with 5 to 7 unique directions and take it from there. We're good. So most often the final design will come out of those initial 5 to 7 directions. But there are times where we're exploring 10, 20, 30, and as many as 40 initial directions before a client finds the hook that grabs them. All of those projects happen online via design website. We've always been an internet company, as it were, right from the get-go. We will help you through the design. We will help you with color selection down to the part number. And then most importantly, we'll fully engineer and specify the scheme down to the millimeter or the 1/8 of an inch, depending where it's being painted, so that there's no question what happens in the paint shop. The document that we send, which is a PDF file that's typically 10 to 20 pages long, that goes to the paint shop, in essence becomes the owner's contract with the paint shop for how the aircraft should look. Mm-hmm. And we remain accessible throughout the painting process. So if the paint shop has a question, they pick up the phone or send an email and we help them through any issue. The only other options we have are bringing in 3D photorealistic design, as opposed to 2D side views that are more commonly used. And that's something we've been doing for the past 8 or so years, and it's proved very popular as well. But
would you say, I was going to say, Craig, so 2D and 3D, which of those do clients generally prefer? Is it the 2D option or?
The majority of clients tend to use the 2D option because the 3D option does involve more expense. So we find a very heavy leaning towards 3D amongst our corporate business jet owners and airliners, and a smaller tendency towards 3D when it comes to light twins and singles and home-built aircraft. So it depends on the market. Some people absolutely want it. Some people who look at an aircraft, particularly people who are owners who sit in the back and let other people do the flying, often it's more difficult for them to look at and fully understand 2-dimensional drawings. So when I see 3-dimensional photorealistic pictures of their plane from different angles on the ramp or flying, they're far more able to appreciate the design that they're seeing. It varies. I mean, we've done everything from Cessna 172s and RV10s in 3D up to, you know, Boeings and Airbuses and whatnot.
So obviously, moving on to that question, which of those projects have stood out for you?
Which of the projects have stood out for us? That proves to be one of the most difficult questions that anyone can ask me, because it's like saying, which of your children do you prefer? So I was thinking about that, and there are a few key milestone projects. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the first milestone is the first paint scheme I ever designed, which was on my own Cessna 150, which was actually an adaptation of a scheme of a Sikorsky S-76 back in 1978, or I think it was, that I'd seen in a magazine, in Flying Magazine. And in the end, that's what I used as the inspiration for my own design. So that's always stood out to me. Important designs that I think come to mind as soon as you talk to me include the first factory design we ever did, which was for the Piper Meridian. That was really the scheme that took us from being a bedroom operation to a real company. It had good longevity, and there's still many of them flying around today in that livery. And it spurred many designs on many aircraft around the world from people who really liked it. So I've always had a soft spot for that design. I like simple, and every year we do projects for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association in the US. They give away an aircraft every year or two in their annual sweepstakes or biannual sweepstakes. And we've been doing those aircraft since 1999, all except one or two that didn't need a paint design in the renovation process. And two of those, or three of those at least, should I say, really stand out to me. One of them was when they went back to the venerable Cessna 150, 152, and they reimagined the aircraft, and they were taking older 152s and 150s and completely rebuilding them into brand new trainers. And we came up with a very simple, clean design for them, a single stripe, because even a single stripe gets designed. Yep. And that really stood out in my mind. The other two projects that I really love from AOPA was when we did the V-tail Bonanza for them, which was done for the 2001 sweepstakes. And what I liked so much about that is they gave me a free hand. Back in 2001, people were still very much stuck in the 70s when it came to designs on beach products. You followed the classics, and that's what you did. And so when we came out with this design that emulated airflow all over the aircraft and was far more elegant and curvy, I actually got hate mail from Bonanza owners when AOPA published the design. And people said, it's a phase, it'll never last. Meanwhile, it ended up being one of our designs with the greatest longevity, one of our most copied or stolen designs, which doesn't make me happy, but still, I see that design used on Bonanzas worldwide. And certainly it proved the naysayers wrong. And to this day, we're still doing a lot of curvy and elegant design. And then I can't say anything about AOPA without looking at my current AOPA project, which is the RV10 that they've completely renovated and rejuvenated and are just giving away now. And this is an RV10 where when we started the project, I said my only rule is that there's going to be no white on the aircraft. I wanted a plane that really stood out, and we ended up doing it in primarily a super deep, rich red and black with a bit of gold trim over the whole aircraft. Wow. And it is a stunning aircraft. When you see it on a ramp, your eye has to go to it. You look at all those sea of white planes, and then suddenly there's this red Ferrari-like plane standing in the middle there, and you know you have to walk up to that one and go have a look. So that's a very successful aircraft. And I did get the opportunity to fly it, so that was fun too. Then over the years, there have been numerous other designs, almost too numerous to mention, but I'll just mention a few that come to mind that I thought were particularly interesting. What got me into the world of 3D was working on the Eclipse. Just about every Eclipse out there, not 100%, but just about everyone out there, we've done paint schemes for, because we were the designers for the factory, and we've done many since they've stopped production. And there's one particular Eclipse that we've done that has airbrushing and just incredible artwork that's derived from the owner's mind. I mean, we were really emulating the owner's true desire to get this design on his aircraft, and that's really stood out to me as a beautiful design. We've also been the designer for many years, since about 2004 or so, for Daher that makes the TBMs. And I have a soft spot for TBMs. I have a lot of friends who own TBMs. It's an aircraft to aspire to that I probably will never own, but at least that's the airplane I look up to and say that would be the perfect plane to own for me. And so I particularly like the many designs we've done for the factory. They have always been a very interesting company to work with, and it's resulted in a lot of innovative design that's, again, been emulated all over. And then the last one that really jumps to mind is for a large client that we do many aircraft for, called Coulson, who's a firefighting company. And they use a wide range of aircraft in their firefighting operations, which they do all around the world, from Australia to Alaska to Chile to everywhere. And as part of their as part of their firefighting fleet, you say that fast, as part of their firefighting fleet, they have 737s. And you would think this is a working plane that's not going to need anything fancy. We did some incredibly interesting design work on their 737s. They just absolutely, for a working aircraft, they're amongst the most beautiful 737s you ever saw in your life. And it was very interesting when the huge fires were going on in Australia and their whole fleet had moved down to Australia. It was fun to watch the news when they were talking about the tremendous destruction in Australia, and they're flying over as the 737 that I designed, dropping precious fire retardant on those horrific fires. Mm. So that plane has always held a special place for me since I did it years ago. I could probably go on for about 2 hours and I would never get through, because at the end of the day, every project is special.
And that's what sets you apart from many, because you are so personable, Craig. You've mentioned it all the way through. Just you want to make sure your customer is happy, like everybody does. But you go I believe you go the extra mile. As you say, going back the flat fee. Then come back to me as many times as you want. I want you to be happy and satisfied. Your client that still was working on his design since 2003. That's just a prime example of that. Craig, I want to thank you for giving me your time today, and obviously it's been fascinating hearing the stories, and looking forward to catching up with you again as well, physically rather than over Zoom. But before we do go, if anybody wanted to find out more information from scheme designers, or in fact get in touch with you or a member of your design team, where can they go?
The most effective way is go through our website. On there, you'll find all the information about what we do, our full price lists, tons of samples of projects we've done, and of course, all our phone numbers. Feel free to pick up the phone, call me directly, and I'll be happy to spend time discussing your project.
And you're on social media as well, I believe.
We are. We have a very interesting, I think, Facebook site, because that's where we post all the latest pictures that clients send us of their aircraft. So that's an interesting one to look through. And we do have an Instagram account, and we're in the middle of setting up a big YouTube channel.
Perfect. Well, Craig, as I said, really appreciate your time. I know it's the morning over there at the moment, so I'll let you continue with your work. I heard the emails coming in the background, so there's a lot of overnight work and continuing work. I know you need to get to grips with. But again, thank you very much, Craig, and sending best wishes to you over the pond.
And you too, Alex. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
No worries at all. Cheers.